Watch what happens this time when the counselor keeps the conversation focused on the student's own goals and values, encouraging her to think about what behaviors fit best with her own plans for the future.
Hi, Andrea. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
So I don't know how much you know already about sort of my role here and why you're even here. So I thought I'd start by telling you a little bit about myself. Basically, my job is to meet with all of the students. I meet with everybody about once or twice a semester and just talk with you a little bit about how things are going, different behaviors that you might be engaging in, and thinking about any changes you might want to make for your life if you decide that you do. It's not my job to change you. I couldn't even if I wanted to. That's not my role at all. It's really to help you think about, how things are going for you and how you might like making changes or moving forward. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we start by you telling me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. As you know, I'm Andrea. I'm a junior. I'm in the marching band. I play the tenor sax.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, I'm also I'm a little bit of a band geek. I play, in the wind ensemble and the jazz band, things like that.
Wow, you really are involved in music.
Yeah.
When did you start?
I started playing about 10 years ago, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, I started on the violin first, and then I went on, explored a little with the piano, clarinet, finally found the tenor sax, and yeah.
Very cool. I've always wanted to be good at music. All right, so it sounds like you're in band and a few other musical ensembles.
Yeah.
Any other hobbies you have or things you like to do for fun?
Just hanging out with my friends or go to the beach, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Just kind of everyday sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your family.
Well, I have one older brother. He's about 8.5 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
My parents, and I have a dog.
Cute. What kind of dog?
He's a golden retriever.
Oh, nice.
My
Okay.
big boy.
Very fun. All right, and how are things going in school for you?
They're pretty good. Grades have been pretty all right. Still like 3.7-ish.
Okay, great. So you're doing well. What sorts of goals do you have for after college or after high school?
I'd like to, of course, graduate high school. Hopefully go to a nice Ivy League school. But,
all right.
I mean, that might not happen. And then I'd like to go on and become a doctor, study psychology, maybe become a psychiatrist or something.
Okay, you have some pretty big dreams.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really exciting to think about that and
Yeah.
sort of be looking forward to the future and those things. All right, well, one thing I'm going to ask you about is, different people have sort of different things that they really value in their life, whether it's, their cultural identity or their family or their friends or job or hobbies, things like that. So here's a little sheet that goes through just some basic values that might be more or less important to certain people, like belonging or sense of community, again, cultural identity or family, friendship, modesty, religion, respect, self-determination, and spirituality. So when you think about yourself, which of these are kind of most important to you in terms of your life?
I think a sense of community and belonging.
Okay.
I think those two. And respect.
Respect. Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about why you picked those three?
Yeah, well, I picked community and belonging. I kind of related them. You know how I said I was in the marching band?
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy being in like that team setting of, being with other people and all working together towards that one goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of respect, I kind of view that as one of like my major like rules. Like I really do think respect is important, to respect myself and respect those around me. So
Okay.
I place great importance in those.
Okay, great. So sort of being a part of a group and being a part of a team gives you a sense of belonging, like you said, and sort of a sense of purpose in a way.
Purpose.
And then the respect is really sort of all-encompassing,
Yes.
not just authority, but respecting yourself, respecting your teammates or your bandmates and other people around you.
Definitely,
Okay, that's
definitely.
great. All right, well, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about sort of relates to belonging and your friends. So what kinds of things do you like to do when you get together with your friends?
Sometimes we just, go to the movies, go to the beach like I had said, or sometimes we just get together at someone's house, play some board games, and hang out.
Mm-hmm. And when you're hanging out with friends, is there ever alcohol involved?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about how alcohol fits into sort of your social scene?
Well, it's mostly just for parties or party settings. It's kind of to get things going and get everyone loosened up, as they say.
Mm-hmm. And so when you go to parties, most of the time there's alcohol there.
Yeah.
Okay. And how often do you think you would say you're drinking?
I'd say on a not busy month, for instance, I'd say about like 2 weekends out of the month, 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm. So about half the time you're
Yeah.
drinking and half the time you're not. Yeah. Can you tell me what's different about the days when you choose to drink versus not to drink?
The days that we drink are mostly, like I said, they're parties. So it's more of that whole partying and dancing and, you know, having everyone have fun. And then when we don't, it's a lot more relaxed. It's a lot more hanging out, playing board games, watching a movie. It's not, yeah.
So it really depends on what the activity is, whether
Yeah.
or not alcohol is going to be
Definitely.
there. Okay. And do you notice a big difference, or can you tell me about the difference in your enjoyment level at, say, a party versus the night you're playing board games?
I think of them as different. I think, you know, night in playing board games and things, it's meant to be relaxing. So it's nice to have like that kind of breather versus with a party, it's a lot more energetic. It's after it all, it's very draining. But in the moment, it's quite fun to dance and have fun.
Okay. So there's sort of pros and cons on both
Yeah.
sides. Okay. What are the things that you like about drinking or like about alcohol?
It's, you know, when we drink, we tend to have more fun because I guess we're not, you know, everyone's drinking together. We're a lot more loosened up and relaxed and not really thinking about stresses or things like that. But it can be, when it's too much drinking, it can be obviously bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sort of in the too much drinking or times, can you tell me some of the less good things or not so good things about alcohol?
A lot of times it'll make people stupid. Yeah, you know, people make dumb decisions and things like that. We usually try to be as safe about it as possible. So we'll like sleep over a friend's house, and so that, you know, we're not driving, and it's mostly within our friend group, so we're not worried about strangers putting weird things in our drinks. But definitely some of the ideas people can have when they're drunk can be really stupid.
So you're trying to, like you said, not engage in really dangerous activities.
Yeah.
You're trying to stay put. You're not driving. You're trying to stay with people that you trust.
Yeah.
But yet it sounds like there's still some things happening from time to time.
Sometimes, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I especially don't like it whenever me or one of my friends, like, we drink too much and we end up like throwing up or things like that. That's not fun.
Yeah. Throwing up is never fun.
It's not.
And how often do you think that happens?
For me, that's happened to me once. It was the first time I ever drank, and it was a lot. I didn't know what I was doing. I was mixing all kinds of weird things and just kind of taking anything anyone gave me. And that didn't end well. But after that, I haven't. But I do have friends that still do sometimes, so I'll end up like having to take care of them or something, and it kind of puts a downer on my fun.
Okay, so on the one side, some of the fun things associated with alcohol are people are just more relaxed, sort of carefree, can kind of let loose a little bit more. But on the other hand, there's a little bit more, I guess, planning involved because you have to make sure that you're doing it safely or as safe as you can. And then there can be some other consequences like throwing up, or even if it's not you, that sometimes you're stuck. Your fun is sort of ruined when you're stuck dealing with a friend who drank too much. Okay. Any other not so good things about the alcohol?
Yeah, people can get a little like sloppy, I guess. Like they're all loose, like with people in corners doing things that should be done in private and that kind of stuff.
So you're kind of stuck being exposed to things you don't need to see.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, you mentioned a couple times that you've made a few decisions to try and limit the dangerous aspect of the drinking. Why did you make those decisions?
I have an aunt who is an alcoholic, so I see like the issues that are involved, and I've seen movies and things. I know that drunk driving is an issue. So I want to be as safe as possible in those terms, and be in a setting where like we can let loose but still be safe, like at someone's house or someone's parent home or something. But so I know that there are dangers involved, and I guess I want to limit that and still be able to have fun.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds kind of similar to your value of respect too.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, the drinking maybe helps with the belonging community to start. If there's too much, then it sort
kind of defeats the purpose.
Right. And then with the respect, one of the things you mentioned is really wanting to respect yourself and not sort of cross boundaries, not sort of cross lines. How do you think that the drinking fits in with that?
In terms of what? In terms of respect? I think, well, in a way, I do think that drinking is probably a form of disrespect to my own body, because I'm putting things in it that shouldn't be there.
Okay.
And then, but in terms of how ways I am respecting myself, I'm respecting myself by like trying to stay in someone's house and like trying to limit my drinking so I don't get to that blacked out, like throwing up and everything, and try to, let loose but still be in control of my behavior. So I'm not gonna go with some random person I met into I don't know where to do I don't know what and things like that.
Okay. So you're sort of looking for that balance of how much you can drink to have some of the positive benefit but not cross over. Okay. And what have you come up with at this point? Do you have sort of a limit that you stick to, or
I start off by make sure that I make my own drink, so I know what's in it and how much is in it, so that way I control how much I drink. So I'll usually just, get one of those cups and then make one drink, and then I'll try to make it last as long as possible, and I'll be like, all right, this is my one drink, and I'm good. And that way I still have something in my cup, so people aren't going to be like, oh, here, have some more. I'll be like, no, I'm good, I have mine, and I'll still be, having some to, like, let loose a little.
Okay. So. And do you feel that that's working pretty well for you, or do you sometimes exceed that limit, or what do you think?
For the most part, it works pretty well because, like I said, people, if people come asking me, trying to pressure me, I'll be like, no, I'm good. I have, I still have some. Like, I'll get some later and then never end up getting anything. But sometimes they'll be like, hey, let's take a shot. And everyone's gathered around, like, the kitchen or something, ready to take a shot. And then at that point, I'll be like, oh, well, maybe I can take one more. And that's when I start, falling into it too much.
So a portion of the time it's working well for you, and another portion of the time maybe you could like to make some adjustments to make it a little smoother. Okay. So kind of thinking along those lines, how important is it to you to make some changes or make some adjustments to your drinking to sort of fit with your values and your goals for yourself?
I'd like to make sure that I, in terms of respecting myself and my body, I'd like to, try to drink less.
Okay.
Like, it is nice to let loose and have fun, but I'd also like it to be so, I'm not damaging my body, and I'm, like, my liver doesn't work by the time I'm, like, 22. And, have my friends on board with a similar mentality so we can kind of work at it together as a group, as a community.
So kind of combining those goals. Okay. So you have a goal, it sounds like, of actually cutting back on your drinking. How important is it to you to work on that goal on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not at all important and 10 is it's the most important thing right now?
I'd say about like a 6 or a 7.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to work on it, but if I get around to it, I get around to it. If I don't, I don't.
Well, why'd you say 6 or 7 rather than like a 4?
Because I still think it's important. I still, like I said, I don't want my body trapped, especially going to med school. Like, I know how things affect your body and also affect your social and your schoolwork and things like that. I know that once I get to college, it's not gonna work out being, drinking every weekend and then like trying to wake up early and go to school, take an exam. Like, I know that's not feasible. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, looking ahead, you can't keep drinking this way and reach the goals that you have for yourself. Okay. Well, how confident are you that you could cut down if you wanted to?
I think
On that same scale from 1 to 10.
I think if I made the decision I was going to for sure, then I think definitely like a 10. I know I'd be
Oh,
able
wow.
to.
Okay. Why'd you
It's
say
just-
10?
It's just because I know that once I make the decision, I know I can do it.
Uh-huh.
It's making the decision in the first place.
Okay.
Whether
Okay. And so you mentioned, quite a few reasons why you would like to cut down. Have you thought at all about how you might go about doing that?
I'm thinking of maybe like trying to convince my friends without sounding, dorky or something. Be like, hey, let's just stay in today. Like, let's not go out or something. Or just be like, hey, I'm not going to drink today. And then even if my friends do, like being okay with them drinking around me and not doing it, and then them being okay with me not drinking and them doing whatever they want.
So sort of trying to plan more activities that don't involve alcohol,
Yeah.
and then also trying to participate in activities without drinking yourself, or maybe even drinking less than you're drinking now. Okay. Does that sound like a goal you want to work on now, or?
I think so. I think it's very feasible. I think it's possible.
Okay. So I guess we'll talk about less alcohol activities. I'm just making some notes to myself. And then maybe reducing the amount of drinking that you're doing if alcohol is involved. Okay. So that goal sounds feasible, you said. Would it be okay if we met in a couple weeks to sort of see how it's going?
I think so. I think that's good.
Does that sound like something you'd like to do?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you spending the time talking to me. It sounds like you have a lot of really good goals for yourself, really ambitious goals of going to medical school and, becoming a psychiatrist or some other form of physician. You're really looking forward to doing well in school so you can get there. And it sounds like you have a pretty active social life and a lot of friends who you feel probably would be supportive even if you cut
Hopefully.
down on alcohol. And that, there's a lot of benefits you see both to your body and your health, your school performance, and even some of the social stuff in terms of feeling a sense of belonging without having to deal with some of the gross consequences of drinking too much. So yeah, it really sounds to me like you have a good plan in place, and as long as you're willing and interested in meeting again, I'd be very excited to be able to talk with you about how it's going.
Yeah, I'd like to.
All right, great. So I'll plan to see you then in a few more weeks.
Perfect.
All right, great.
This time, the counselor began by setting the agenda and emphasizing the student's autonomy right away. She used open questions and reflections to build rapport, then turned to a focus on Andrea's values in order to deepen the connection. This led easily into a discussion of Andrea's social life and an open question about the role that alcohol plays in it. Skillful use of reflections guided the conversation while encouraging the student to open up to the counselor. By using a decisional balance, the counselor was able to assess barriers to change, as well as to elicit reasons for change and opportunities to affirm Andrea's good decisions. She was then able to ask Andrea to expand on her reasons for setting limits with her drinking, which highlighted some of the consequences of alcohol use without using lectures or scolding the student. The counselor also tied the drinking behavior to Andrea's values, helping to develop a discrepancy between her personal goals and actions. This set the stage for clarification of goals and beginning discussion of a change plan. However, the counselor encouraged the student to choose her own behavior change goal in order to ensure it was something Andrea felt confident she could achieve. She ended the session with a summary of their discussion, expressed appreciation for Andrea's participation, and communicated optimism about the plan and her desire to continue working with her in the future.